Wait, do anybody watch these teams outside of their own city? Welcome, everybody, to Uncut Nonsense, the show where it ages just like fine wine, except for the host who ages like milk. That being said, I am your host, Doc Klugman, and today we are dissecting the NFC South Division, just almost in time for the first game of the NFL season this year. In the South Division, of course, we have the Atlanta Falcons, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Carolina Panthers, and the New Orleans Saints. This is one of the divisions that, I'll be honest, really does not get a lot of coverage. You have the Buccaneers that obviously had the Tom Brady era. They had all that additional fun stuff that surrounded them for the longest time. They got Baker, who had shifted around from Carolina. Now he is becoming quite a big name in Tampa Bay. It's good that he has finally found his spot. Anybody who could survive being drafted by the Cleveland Browns deserves something, even if it is a second chance. And then you have the rest of the teams that are sort of floating around. Saints haven't done anything since the Sean Payton, Drew Brees days. Carolina had their one good year once upon a time, about, I think we're getting on almost 10 years ago now. And then you had the one or two good years with the Falcons with Matt Ryan. And of course, we all know the Super Bowl of 28-3. But this is just one of the divisions that you look at it and it just seems like every year is just a disappointment. You had the division winner that makes it to the playoffs by basically default. Maybe they'll get out of the wild card if they play a wild card team that's subpar, and sometimes maybe not even that case. Sometimes you just get that stacked team that that wild card team that really ends up getting like 12 wins, but one of their divisional opponents did somewhat better than them, and they're the ones that end up beating the life out of the winner of the NFC South. And you can say the same thing for the AFC. AFC South has the same problem with that as well. However, I still think that just this division produces a lot more lackluster. It's close, but I want to say I'll give this one the edge when it comes to mediocrity just across the board and just mediocrity consistently with these teams. But nonetheless, let's break it down because regardless, there are games that will be played with these teams. And if you're a fan of them, well, good luck to you again this year. Starting off, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Last year, they had a lot of high hopes. They get Kirk Cousins in there from Minnesota. And I'll tell you right now, first things first, before I dive into the Falcons, Kirk Cousins' agent needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Not because he's played the game, but just because he has tricked the entire NFL into thinking that Kirk Cousins is anything but an average quarterback. Gets you by in the regular season. If he gets you enough wins, you can go to the postseason, in which then you'll end up losing. And, everybody loves to rip on the quarterbacks of the Dallas Cowboys and, Lamar Jackson as of recently, Josh Allen not being able to finish the job against KC in the playoff. Everybody loves to rip on these sort of quarterbacks for like, oh, they can't finish. They're bad in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers, you can even go back with him after he won the Super Bowl with Green Bay. His playoff record was kind of, in the fence. Peyton Manning had a hard time getting past Tom Brady many, many moons ago, in the early 2000s or so, even going into the late 2000s, and nobody talks about Kirk Cousins on how he does not have the same or I should say, he doesn't have the great qualities that you look at when it comes to. He is just as bad, if not worse, than some of these other quarterbacks, but everybody talks about them. And when it comes time to go to another team, because Kirk really does not stay on one team just because he can't lead a team to success. He gets bounced around to somebody else, and he gets paid top dollar to be mediocre. Same thing happened last year. They finished up 8-9, second in the South. Home was at 4-5 record, and they went 500 on the road. Really, nothing too amazing about that. I mean, they literally were just under 500 team. Turnovers obviously was a little bit of an issue. Kirk Cousins had a stretch where he just was a turnover machine. And it does not show besides that when it comes to the offense. Points per game, they were 13th. Rushing attack, they were 10th. And offensive passing wise, they were 5th. Now, keep in mind, there were many times near the end of the season that Penix ended up coming in, the rookie last year. And so that obviously has something to do with a little bit as well. We can't give it all solely on one of them because they did swap quarterbacks throughout the season. But I mean, at the same time, you look at this, you're like, oh, well, the stats don't prove that. It shows it enough when you're giving this much money and faith into somebody and they can't do it. It's different if you're giving Kirk Cousins middle to the road or below average. Hey, we brought you in or whatever. Let's see what you can do. And he puts up those numbers. That's fine. Like what they did with Sam Darnold last year with Minnesota. They brought him in, wasn't expecting much. He ended up performing pretty darn good. They got their money's worth. Disappointing ending, clock struck midnight. Sam Darnold turned into a pumpkin again, and then it was all tears after that. But Kirk Cousins, you paid him top dollar. You paid him a good amount to still be 8-9 and finish up second in the division, in a bad division, I should say. Second in the division would be nice if it wasn't the NFC South, and that's the result for it. Defense was a little bit more of a mess, 23rd in points per game. Rushing attack was at 15, and the defensive pass was really not too good at all. There was 22nd overall. And now that we see Kirk Cousins take the back seat and Penix goes in, I'm excited for the team. I really am. I'm excited to see what they got to do because I want to see, well, no longer a rookie. Second year, Penix got a chance to sit a little bit. He got a chance to play a little bit. Now I want to see what happens when the faith is put into his hands. People kind of knew before the draft started, we got Kirk Cousins. He's going to be our guy. We were stunned in the draft last year when the Falcons ended up selecting Penix, another quarterback. But at the same time, now we look around and now we realize, well, Penix last year was not going to start. This year, we know he's going to start. This is going to be the moment for him to be able to actually take a hold of everything and see if he actually is a good fit in Atlanta. He's gotten a chance to watch, which is good. I wish he would have watched a little more, not be thrown in there just to get some cheap wins. I understand last year near the end of the season, the back half, the Falcons were still technically in uh, contention for the division, so they still could have made the playoffs. I understand why they wanted to still try to win as many games as possible because there still was a fighting chance for them. But at the same time, I just wish you paid all that money to Kirk Cousins. Just let him finish out the year. At that point, what more could really be damage wise? Let's look at their schedule now. Home, obviously, besides their divisional opponents, they got Washington. That's going to be a rough one. You got Buffalo. You got Miami. All these, thankfully, being played at home does not make them any more easier, though. You have the Rams, and then you have the Seahawks. Now, this is an average to above average, level of opponents that they're playing, and it's going to be very critical for them to have a good home record. They fell just under 500 at the home record last year. It's going to be very important to get these critical games. Now, your road is a little bit different. You got Minnesota. We don't know what JJ is going to do. We got the Jets. We got New England. We got Indy. We got Arizona. And you got a mixed bag in San Francisco. So even the road schedule's not that bad. Remember, this was a team that finished up second place, and this is supposed to be the maybe above average schedule that they might anticipate to get. Now, granted, you are playing the entire AFC East, so you do get a break with that since three of those teams can somewhat turn out to be wins. However, it just seems like that if Atlanta's going to do something with Penix, they're going to do something in general with that team. They have to improve the defense, that's for sure. This is the time to at least do it. Your division is not filled with juggernauts. That this is the time to strike, and this is the time for Penix to actually prove that he can do it in his sophomore year. But again, with that, time will tell. It's just very, very interesting right now of a place to be in Atlanta. After that, we have the Carolina Panthers, and what a mess that was, especially on defense. The record tells you alone 5-12. They finished up third. They were 3-6 at home, 2-6 on the road. The defense was the problem. Let's not sugarcoat it here. dead last in points per game. Defense gave up literally everything. They were dead last in the run, and the pass they were 23rd, which is still atrocious. Let's be real. The defense was just garbage. And the offense did not do much better. 23rd points per game. Offensive rush was a little bit better at 18th. Um, and then for the passing game was 30th. It wasn't much better on the offense, but the defense really was the highlight because they were just so bad for the Carolina Panthers. They had Bryce Young at the start of the season. They benched him after what was I think like 2 games. They brought in little Red Rider, uh, Dalton, and he did a little bit and then could not get it done. So then they went back to Bryce. And the good news with Carolina is that you finished on a high note in a way. You scraped across a couple of cheap wins at the end, and you end up getting yourself into, I guess, a better spot with Bryce. It could be different if they brought him back in and he continued to lay an egg. If he did, then I wouldn't blame the Panthers for moving on from Bryce Young immediately, even though it would stink that would only be his second year. They gave up everything. They gave up a first round pick to the Chicago Bears 2 years ago so they can get Bryce Young. And they were so bad that they ended up losing the first round pick the next time for the Chicago Bears due to that how that trade worked out, the draft picks. And it just seems like a whole lot's not going right. I know, 5-12, it's still not a good record to have from last season. I think there was a lot more optimism than what ended up happening at the end of the year. I think the Panthers should feel a little bit more optimistic, maybe on the offensive side of the ball, even though I still think it's going to be bad for them. But the defense is where the problem lies. They need to improve. They need to improve up front. They need to improve, just in general, everywhere along the field, even in the secondary, even in the linebacker position. The whole defense is a mess that clearly does not know what the heck they're doing. They don't have a full leader, in my opinion, either on that. They had Brian Burns 2 years back, did a trade with him to try to get something, and they did a trade with the Giants, and Brian Burns is doing pretty good over there in New York. But there just is no strong leader I see on the Panthers team that truly puts that team together. Only 17 takeaways either. They're not doing their job when it matters most. Let's take a look at their schedule, though. They got Dallas at home. Again, Dallas can put up points if they want to. Don't sleep on them when it comes to getting points together. You got Buffalo, you got Miami. Those 2 games are going to be hit or miss with some of that. Buffalo, I'm sure, will just railroad them. You got Seattle and you got the Rams. Basically, somewhat of the similar home schedule as the Falcons do. And for the Panthers, I see it as more daunting at home than it would be for the Falcons, just because I believe the Falcons are a better team. I think they're just more equipped, especially on the defensive front, than the Panthers are. On the road, you got Green Bay. That's going to be a tough one. The Jets in New England are going to be sort of more evenly matched, where they can end up maybe getting some win off of there if they definitely play their cards right. Arizona, don't sleep on them, but Arizona will be tough. We'll go over that the next one with the NFC West breakdown. Then you have San Francisco, and then you have Jacksonville. Actually, Jacksonville will be week 1 for them in Jacksonville. So again, an easy opportunity for them to be able to potentially get some wins this season. But none of this is a cakewalk for them. None of this you can really look at and be like, oh, yeah, they definitely have an upper hand against this team. It's just not the case. I mean, you have New Orleans, of course, being that it is your divisional opponent. You play them twice. But even still, are you good enough to beat New Orleans? Possibly, but you can't sit there for sure, even with your home game against them, and be like, oh, yeah, we got a good grasp on this. Last year, New Orleans railroaded them in the first, I think it was the first or second game of the season, where it wasn't even close. And this is the same team that finished dead last in your own division. This is not something that is a positive situation for the Panthers. This whole video is going to be negative, let's be honest, until we get to the Bucks. But it's just there's so much that needs to be fixed. And I don't see it getting done this year. And I don't see enough of it that got done during the offseason. I think you need to focus the whole offseason on the defensive side for the Carolina Panthers. And the fact that they focused on the defense, they did not focus all of it. Everything, or at least 90% of the offseason, needed to be focused on this defense. You can't get any worse than your points per game and your rushing, because you were literally dead last If you are dead last, something needs to be improved immediately. And if not, then you're in for another long road. After that, we do have the Buccaneers, so we'll be a little happy about this one and talking about Baker Mayfield and how he has been when it comes to this team. And I know they're getting a new offensive coordinator stepping in this entire for this season. We'll see how that goes. I don't see it being too much of a factor as long as Baker Mayfield still has his weapons around him. Uh, Obviously, if he's going to get that protection from the offensive line, that'll be the name of the game. If he gets a little flustered back there, if he doesn't have enough time, bad things could happen. However, I still have hope that he is able to at least get enough protection to be able to do good things and be able to handle some of his opponents. Last year, though, the Bucks they finished 10-7. Obviously, won the South, was able to get into the playoffs by just winning your division. They were 5-4 at home, 5-3 on the road, above 500 for both of them, which is a good sign given everything. The offense, though, that's where things shine. And Baker had his opportunities, and for the most part, he took advantage. Fourth and fourth in the points per game, fourth in rushing attack. Pass was third. Everything was available in the top five for them, and they took advantage of everything. Now we move on to the defensive though. 16th in points per game, fourth in the rushing. Did very well holding up against the opponent's rushing game. However, the pass was the problem. 29th, that's not cutting it. And that's the problem that it falls on for the Buccaneers. It's the secondary. This is a passing league. And I went over this, I'm going to say last video when I did the East. This is a passing league. That is how the NFL is shaping up. You need to have somewhat of a competent pass defense in order for you to survive some of these games. If their pass defense was better, the Bucks did have a chance to potentially be a 12 or 13 win team. They really, really did because the offense was clicking enough, and obviously your defensive rush was so good. There's no surprise that your defensive rush was fourth, top five in the league, and you're still at 16th in points per game. That is because your pass was so god awful that is the reason why you lost your 7 games. This is what the result is when the passing attack is so the passing defense is so weak. Look at the home schedule for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is now when it gets tricky because you're playing now your other first place finishing opponents. At home, you got Philadelphia. That's going to be rough. Obviously, San Fran and Arizona, you'll get at home, which should be pretty good. You'll end up having the Jets. You'll end up having, the Patriots. This is a pretty simple and easy home schedule. I like it for the Bucks. I think the biggest challenge, obviously, is going to be Philly, but it's a really good home schedule, and I think they easily have the opportunity to win more than 5 games this year by at home as long as they keep true to what they're doing. Road is when it gets a little bit more difficult, though. This is when it gets interesting. You got Houston, you got Detroit, you got Buffalo, you got the Rams, which could be dicey, Seattle, and you have Miami. This is where you're really going to see how good Tampa Bay Buccaneers are. Because not only are you playing some of these harder opponents, some of them obviously being first place finishers last year, planning on being first place in their division again potentially, but you're playing them in their house. That's going to be a whole nother animal. Where I said that the home record could get a lot better this year, it's possible that if these games don't turn out the way they are, that the away record will plummet. They could be under 500 for the road, and that's not good. They have the luxury of being in a division where they can take advantage of their divisional opponents, and they'll be able to hopefully do enough to be able to get them into first place. Do I think they're able to? Yes, I think their possibility is definitely able for them to do this. However, it's all about whether or not we can improve that passing defense and that it's not going to be the Achilles heel that's going to cost you too many games against these harder opponents that you're playing for the most part all on the road. So that's going to be the name and the decider when it comes to how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be shaping out this season. Finally, you have the New Orleans Saints, and I'll be honest with you. I was looking up some of the roster on this team, and many of these names I couldn't even recognize just because it's just somebody who you don't talk about because they don't have anybody. they haven't done much. They've been a team that's, for the most part, been kind of sitting around, and they've been just floating around and not doing much in the off season. The regular season, they were kind of just an opponent that was in the way of a team before they lost to them. They were finished up 5-12. Fourth or dead last. They were kind of tied for third, but I guess they ended up losing out of a tiebreaker with Carolina, and they slipped into last. At home, they were 3-6. Road 2-6. Not much, really, not much better. In fact, a little worse on the road. Uh, and the big problem was just a little bit all around. There wasn't some things where they were absolutely god awful, except for pretty much the defensive rush, which was 31st. The defensive pass was not too good either at 27th. Then obviously points per game is not good either. But even on offense, 24th points per game, 13th on the rush, which was pretty respectable. It was above average when it comes to the entire league. You had Camaro, obviously the running back. He's back again this year for the Saints. I think that's really your biggest thing. You lose your quarterback with Cars. He eventually retires. He didn't even play the whole season last year. And as I hate to say, because I was a big Derek Carr fan, if he's not going to end up being able to play the whole season, injuries and all that other stuff, maybe it's time that we let him go and we have to think about doing something for the future. It was a gamble a few years ago to get him from the Raiders, and you scooped him up. And I think at that point it was a big high point of like, oh well, people thought, oh, it wasn't Derek Carr, it was the Raiders. It was all the Raiders, such a broken organization. They weren't doing what they were supposed to do. They weren't treating them right, yada yada yada. Which some of that very much could be true. But at the same time, Derek Carr was not a major catch. It wasn't like you were, nailing this incredible QB and be like, oh yeah, he's our guy, perfect. That was the missing piece in the puzzle. But it's the fact that you still now need to move on to another quarterback, and that's going to be Rattler. And I don't have faith in Rattler. I really don't. I don't think he can run this team like Carwell. I don't think it's going to be an absolute train wreck, but you never know because it wasn't too good last year. I mean, it's kind of hard to go below 5 wins, the ones that you had from last season. Possible, but you're setting up with a somewhat easy schedule, so you got to be able to do something. And it's really easy, especially at home. You got the Giants, you got the Jets, you got the Patriots, you got the Cardinals, and you got San Francisco. Again, winnable games, but it's the Saints we're talking about. Nothing is guaranteed. I don't see playmakers on their team that'll be able to really make that major difference, or at least enough playmakers that can lead this team in the right direction. On the road, you got Chicago, uh, again, are you going to be able to beat them? Chicago ain't the best team either, but you look at from this point, at least they've been doing stuff. At least they've made moves. I can't say the same really for New Orleans. You got Buffalo, you got Miami, you got Seattle, you got the Rams, you got Tennessee. Tennessee's going to be obviously displaying Cam Ward, their shiny new rookie quarterback, and we'll see what they can do when it comes to that. I only see a handful of wins with this, especially considering that all these other bad teams, they've made improvements. The Patriots have got better. The Cardinals, I feel, have got better. The Giants, I think, have got better. I think the Bears have got better. I think Tennessee has the potential, maybe where they've gotten a little bit better. But besides that, I don't know how many wins I can really stack up for the Saints to win. And with that, I don't see them having another good season just because they need to get some big, heavy playmakers. And even if it involves wheeling and dealing some players, maybe some draft picks or something like that, you need at least one or two big names in there to be able to at least settle everybody and show that leadership. That's what they need right now because there's a whole lot of nothing going on right now in New Orleans. So with that being said, we time for the rankings. And this is a tough division because I feel like any of these teams really could drop a bunch of games when I expect them to potentially win, or they could potentially get some of these games and they turn out to be wins. And it's such a hard way to rank this because this division's always a toss up for some of the wrong reasons because some of the teams are not that good. But finally, what I'm going to do, fourth place will be the Saints. I just don't see enough in them to be able to really do something. I'll give the Panthers third. I think the defense will be slightly improved, but I just don't see them really being that much better in order for them to actually make a run. Some people think that with Bryce Young coming into another year, a little bit more confident, will be better. I honestly don't think it will be. After that, now you got the Falcons. I can't put that much trust in Penix before I seen him start a season from the beginning, and that leaves you with the Bucks. I can't say that in a shootout between the Falcons and the Bucks, I trust Baker Mayfield. I never thought I'd say this, but I trust Baker Mayfield a lot more to be able to win this shootout. He did it last year. He put up a lot of points. Really helped his team get some of those wins, even though it was only a 10-win season for them. Really, really helped them out a lot. And it was because of Baker in certain ways. And I really liked what they were doing in offense, especially too on the defensive side with that rushing. They were a big pain in the butt for a lot of these teams that they faced. And I think if the defensive pass game improves for the Buccaneers, then I really think that they can easily win this division. And I think it's going to be quite obvious with this one. But that's just what I think in this case. So again, I have Bucks finishing first place. Falcons will take second place. The Panthers will get third, and the Saints will be in last place in this division. That's what I see like going forward with this. Well, that'll do it for this one. Next one coming up, we'll have the NFC West division to wrap up the entire NFC conference. If you liked what you heard, please think about subscribing. Also, drop a few comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what your views are about this and how you think your teams, whether they're your favorite team or not, stacks up in this situation here. Other than that, I will see you on the next one.